Greetings, welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the Gemini full moon of the 15th of December, also known in North American culture as the cold moon. At 23 degrees and 52 minutes, it's also aligned with a very influential fixed star, which I will share with you. But we need to go back further in the year to get to the seeding point of this event, and that's when we had the Gemini new moon on the 6th of June. But that was conflicted in a very powerful way by the cold, potentially repressive energies of Saturn buried deep in the 12th sign of the Zodiac, the emotional Pisces. So as much as we can think about the sign of Gemini, ruled by Mercury, as being about talk and thought, about being very vivacious, fast exchanges, perhaps feeling a little restless, our connection with technology, the third house very much to do with that, Saturn has been there providing its influence throughout that whole period. Perhaps Saturn has had a very powerful subconscious impact on us all. So our fears and worries have been informing our thoughts, very Gemini. But what about the role of the sun in the sign of Sagittarius? Because a full moon is when the moon and the sun are essentially competing, and that's what causes the tension. We're all going to feel this energy, this heightened energy, and of course the sky is lit up by the power of the moon. Ironically, the new moon is almost like a dark moon. It's very hard to actually see very much there. Well, the role of the sun in Sagittarius is very much about higher knowledge rather than that quick communication. So we're going to find out what the reality is around certain situations, or are we? There's a deeper thread to this event, and it involves the two rulers of the sign of Gemini, but also Sagittarius. I'm going to share about that with you too, but also Neptune, the planet of dreams, of spirituality, but also a mesmerizing influence that can distort, is going to be in a T-square with both the sun and the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. I'm going to unpack all of this for you. I'm going to share the event chart from a solar perspective that we can all collectively relate to, but I'm also going to share with you the natal event chart and the house that the moon and the sun occupy. Also the other competing influences, which are going to provide an extra dimension to the next 2-week period of this full moon. Then I'll go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. People often ask, what should I watch? If you know your natal chart, you'll be comfortable with your ascendant, particularly if you know the degree of all your house overlays. If you're not so sure, or your interest in astrology is emerging, you'll never go wrong with the sun, because the sun is the core of our being. If you'd like to talk to me one-to-one, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these. As they come in, I share as is. Also, if you'd like to order your year 2025 personal transit forecast, if you do so now, you'll also get my free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecast. You get 30% off, but crucially, you'll get your Life Roadmap Report. The Life Roadmap Report is in some ways more important than the forecast. It helps us to understand the influences that have played out in our life so far. An intimate understanding of that then helps us to work with the forecast in terms of the timing of our moves in a much more accurate way. Please see below for more. If you'd like to order from a whole sign perspective, you can. If you don't know your time of birth, you can order the solar option. Or if you'd like to go the spiritual karmic route, you can order your draconic option. Please see below for more. If you're a patron, thank you so much for all your support. You can download a full moon factoid underneath this video. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click and tap the bell notification symbol. 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Send that signal to YouTube, and also like and comment on the video too. All comments are greatly welcome. This is very much a community. So the Gemini full moon or cold moon occurs on the 15th of December, as I mentioned, worldwide. On the screen now, I'm showing the exact timings in all those cities. Now, in terms of universal time, it's at 9:01 a.m. and at 23 degrees and 52 minutes. If you are someone who's a mutable sign, so that would be Gemini itself, it would also be Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces. If you've got planets between 20 degrees and around about 26 degrees, or if you're not a mutable sign but you have mutable placements in those signs between 20 and 26 degrees, you're going to feel the effect of this lunation in a particularly powerful way, not least because of the role of Neptune, because Neptune is at 27 degrees and 8 minutes, so only about 3 degrees away from the exact moment of the full moon. Now, this full moon applies to a fixed star called Alnilam. Now, this can actually be very, very positive, and particularly for friendships, and it can be fortunate. But I feel because of the role of Neptune, we have to be aware that Neptune can disperse as well as enlighten. The enlightenment of Neptune, particularly in Pisces, the sign it rules, is very much around the spiritual dimension, but it can also be a lot to do with escapism. Now, because the new moon had Saturn square into it in Pisces, that's a cooler, more repressive energy. Neptune doesn't contain, and that's really what Pisces is about. It's limitless. So if we're trying to make some sense of the things we're being told, or we're studying some information, or considering a contract, Neptune being in a square to this event can cause some real mischief. Now, the other takeout is that Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Gemini, is coming to the end of its retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius, ironically, and that ends later today. But also, on the other side of the heavens, we have Jupiter in the sign of Gemini in retrograde, where it's detrimented, as is Mercury, but Jupiter is in a punishing right angle with Saturn, which is going to peak next week on the 24th, Christmas Eve. Now, that's a strategic influence in astrology, very important. If we think Jupiter's about growth, Saturn is not so much anti-growth, but it's certainly asking us to be very mindful of boundaries. And in the sign of Pisces, boundaries are tricky. And also, that particular influence, in a way, is an echo of that Gemini new moon that we had on the 6th of June. So there is a kind of double irony that the fact of Mercury in Sagittarius, detrimented, retrograde, Jupiter in Gemini, retrograde, detrimented, but Saturn is still the mischief maker. So what the sign of Pisces with Neptune since 2012 has been asking us to do really is to engage with the spiritual, psychological and emotional dimension. Saturn comes along, it's more business-like. We've seen some issues around health, some very serious events, but also the commentary around it has been very polarizing. People's views very, very angry because of the harsh economics of business being applied to people's welfare, and that's something that people are very angry about. So we need to be aware that Saturn in Pisces in itself sure is not a panacea, and it's also coming to the end of its overall cycle of 29.5 years. Of course, it's going to move into Aries on the 26th of May through to the end of August for 3 months and 7 days, but it will be back early in 2026 for the long term, starting a whole new cycle. So in a way, Saturn in Pisces is the outcome, it's the culmination sign, but it's the outcome of all what we should have learned, because Saturn is the planet of karma, also of timing, also of harsh lessons. So if we're ignoring our emotional, spiritual and psychological health, or corporate life is ignoring our psychological, spiritual and emotional health, you know, I get a lot of people telling me things, particularly in personal consultations, which are always absolutely confidential. Just the culture of management worldwide is very, very harsh, and that's not particularly good for personkind. So in a way, we are seeing things coming to a close in that cycle, but we're also seeing the worst elements of that cycle, particularly as the shakeout from Saturn's conjunction with Pluto in 220 and Jupiter being in the mix. Jupiter's in its fall in Capricorn. Always get a recession with Jupiter in Capricorn, and that of course saw COVID, a very serious situation, not just in terms of people who lost their lives and got ill, but also economically as well. But we've also seen from that some very resistant forces in terms of how we adapt and how we work and how we take responsibility, how we contribute. So there's a lot of new stuff that wants to come through that in some ways is being inhibited by the power structures that were really manifested at their peak at that time. And it wasn't a great look, was it? So we're still dealing with that stuff. So I go back to the point I've been making for some years about Neptune applying to Gemini and Sagittarian lunations. We've seen a lot of distortion. We're in the post-truth age. No longer is it seems important to be decent. It's all about your point of view. Oh, well, you're decent, but that's because you've got an agenda. So people seem to find an angle, whatever people say. But actually, do you know, there is something very noble about a factual observation that's based on the actual reality, not so much opinion. Now, in terms of the solar event chart on the screen now, you can see the moon in Gemini, 3rd house, obviously Pisces, Neptune, host, 12th. So that shimmering, distorting energies of Neptune could see perhaps our subconscious having quite an impact on how we think, Gemini. But also you can see there that Jupiter in Gemini retrograde, squaring up with Saturn. It lasted so on the 12th of August. They're going to come into a square on the 15th of June in 25, but they'll both be in new homes at that time. Saturn will be in Aries and Jupiter in Cancer. But we also have the opposition between Venus and Mars. Now that can be very sparky, but if we think that Venus in Aquarius is very much about the collective and Mars is very much about the ego. So we could encounter someone whose desire to assert in a very forceful way their point of view, or to in some ways make sure that they get their way. Mars in Leo is a very, very strong position in terms of ego, but Venus in Aquarius is about how it affects everyone else. Now, in a more pleasant way, that opposition could be some kind of flirty attraction that suddenly becomes very intense, and we could find ourselves meeting someone that really is very exciting, and it could be for someone somewhere, and a very passionate clinch under the mistletoe. But I just also want to point out an aspect that I feel that probably won't get flagged up by other astrologers, or not many, and that is that the Sun in Sagittarius is in a quincunx with Uranus. So that's 150 degrees. So if we think about the 9th house energy in terms of the overall zodiac, of the Sun in Sagittarius, that's about freedom, and it's also about doing what we want, being very independent. And Uranus in the sign of Taurus could be about money. So for some people, the aforementioned escapism, which has been so prevalent with Neptune's journey through Pisces, could certainly be shaping up over the next couple of weeks, particularly coinciding with the festive run-up. Now, what about the event chart from a natal perspective? Well, the ascendant is in the sign of Capricorn, but the key really is the houses that the Sun and the Moon occupy. So the Moon's in house 6, very practical, and kind of brings out the more Virgoan energies of Mercury. It's about precision, about detail, helpful with that Neptune T-square. But the Sun, and this is really fascinating, is in house 12. So health, whether it's physical, emotional, practical well-being, or it is more to do with the psychological domain, that could be something that could be greatly influenced over the next 2 weeks. And Neptune's in the second house. We know that Neptune in Pisces can be about addiction in some way, certainly escapism, but because it's in the second house and because of the time of year it is, I feel that if people are feeling their emotions very strongly, and they're likely to do so, and want to express those emotions, I feel that a lot of people are going to be pouring out some of the pain that they're experiencing in terms of work, in terms of money, in terms of, you know, what's going on in the world. Just life has been quite challenging for many people. So I feel, considering we have a full moon in the logical air sign of Gemini, this is actually going to be a very tender full moon. And I think that there are going to be yet more revelations. I know it's easy for astrologers to say these things, but I feel that there will be. You can see that Jupiter's in the 5th house, which is very much about make merry, have fun, but that also squares up with Saturn in house 2. If we do overdo it, you know, on whatever it is, whether it's eating too much Christmas pudding or drinking too much, whatever we decide to do, we're going to feel it, because in a way, trying to escape the reality of the communicational cycle that we all live in these days, which is relentless, could be something that actually doesn't really enhance us in a particularly valuable way. So how do we navigate this full moon? I think for some of us, to be honest, it may be to close down the amount of information sources that we're on the end of, because that isn't necessarily good for our mental health. You know, putting the phone down, I've confessed I use mine far too much, and just chilling out, having some time out, particularly spending some pleasurable interaction with people, you know, playing those old-fashioned games at Christmas that can be great fun, whether it's charades, or we have a game in my family that we used to play for years that I've shared with subsequent friends, fish, fruit, flower, and then you come up with a letter, flip the dictionary, come up with a letter, and then you have to guess about 20 different outcomes or come up with 20 different outcomes. Great fun. And of course, that's nothing to do with using computers and smartphones. So I think if we can get some natural empathetic communication going, that's a really good thing. But I feel that there could be some things that boil into the open because someone says something in a blunt way, which can be Sagittarius, or a frivolous way, which can be Gemini. It is possible that something could come up, an objection, a past memory, and someone could assert that or could get very, very emotional. So that is the possibility over these next 2 weeks. And of course, it is the run up through to the end of the year when we have the black moon, which is the next big lunation, which will be on the 30th of December in the sign of Capricorn. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive forecast for each of the 12 zodiac signs, or to watch my overview, please see the link beneath this video. So Aries, this full moon forecast is for the 2 weeks through to the 30th of December. Therefore, it does provide a backdrop for the festivities themselves. What's the implication for you? Well, I feel that your personality power and charisma can be hugely boosted by Mars starting this journey in an opposition with Venus. So if you do need to connect with people, I feel that people are going to be really drawn to the way that you communicate. Now, because Mercury is about those quick communications and the sign of Sagittarius about the big picture, it's inevitable that we end up talking to people that we wouldn't necessarily always spend time with. Maybe there can be some old issues just washing around in the dark. You may not have them, but someone else could. Perhaps you have got a little bit of anxiety about who you're going to spend at least part of the next couple of weeks with. And, you know, it would be completely understandable because Neptune in the 12th house is a very tender influence. Saturn there, a potentially very harsh one. And of course, the position of Neptune interacts with the Sun and the Moon, and Saturn interacts with Jupiter, which ordinarily we would think would be very vivacious, even though it's not its best sign in Gemini, but of course it is in retrograde and it is conflicted by Saturn. So I think it's a time where with the right people in the right environment, you could be on absolutely top buzzy form and have a wonderful interaction with people. If, however, you're around people that you don't feel quite so comfortable with, I think that can make you a little bit more tentative. I mean, I know that this is part of the dynamics of Christmas for everybody, but I think particularly for you this year. So the best way to approach it really is think through if you are going to be spending time with someone you've not found very easy in the past. Just practice in your mind what some of their responses and the way they might be could be presented as, and just get some, just prepare yourself what your reactions to that are going to be. I think that will be very helpful because essentially this is a full moon about communication, and of course because of the role of Neptune, some of that communication is likely to be subjective. Or it could be that someone's going to say something quickly that's not actually true. And if you're someone who really cares about the facts or the big picture, that could be quite triggering as well. So it's almost like preparing yourself to get through what could be a very, very enjoyable time. But as long as you're aware that some old issues, yours, somebody else's, or just your sensitivities or someone else's, or a little bit of confusion around the arrangements, all of these things might feed into what could cause some issues. But with Mars in that opposition with Venus, as this event unfolds, that really is going to maximize your charisma. And therefore, if you're meeting new people, vivacious people, fun people, it could be that you start to realize that someone has got more than a secret crush on you, and maybe that 12th house energy is that they're about to be revealing it. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. Taurus, you have a wonderful appreciation of the value of things, whether it's merchandise, whether it's Christmas gifts, whether it's food. You just have both an appreciation in terms of the practicalities of the cost, but also the value of it in terms of the enjoyment. So this particular full moon, and especially at this time of the year, which can be rather expensive, is just asking you to make sure that your expenditure is in trim. Because if we go back to that new moon, if you were hoping for a big uptick in your earnings because of Saturn applying to that, it may be that you've been disappointed by certain friendships, associations, a long-term plan didn't quite work out as you hoped, maybe you've had to adapt. It's possible that if you've worked in some kind of collective or community type of situation, that also, or team, that also has proved rather challenging. Now, of course, your ruler is the gorgeous Venus, and it is right at the top of your chart, and it is priming up the possibility of using your considerable people skills to improve your role in life as you go into the new year. But as 2025 begins, so Venus is going to be squaring with Uranus in your sign. So Uranus has been making you very restless in recent years, perhaps a little changeable. And one of the things that I feel that having Saturn in the 11th house has done is made you much more mindful of who you can absolutely totally rely upon and who you can't. So I feel there may be have been quite a few changes of plan in terms of what your future might hold. And this full moon, because Neptune's in the mix, is asking you to be utterly realistic. So if you are thinking about investing some money in a new business or a new big ticket item, I feel that it might be better to wait a little bit longer, get beyond the energy of this particular event, get into 2025, even if it's the early part of 2025, because Venus, your ruler, on the 3rd of January can bring you blessings as it moves into your 11th house. But this particular event could make it very difficult for you to resist a gift that you see for someone that you care deeply for, and of course you can go the extra mile to make sure that you do please your loved ones, which is a wonderful part of your nature. But if you are wanting to keep your budget very much in trim, just be aware that Neptune can in some ways just affect the clarity of your thinking. And because Saturn is in that area too, clashing with the planet of fortune, if you are thinking about anything speculative, I would wait until early next year. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. So Gemini, this full moon is very much about how you feel about things, but particularly around your relationships. If there are people around you, and it could be professionally, to be honest, with Neptune and Saturn in your 10th house, or people who tend to feel they know what's best for you, those energies can be very undermining over the next couple of weeks. And of course, once your ruler Mercury goes direct later today, if there has been some pressure or there's been some cross wires, or it's been very difficult to get the flow going backwards and forwards in a way that you've been happy with, then that Mercury station in direct can certainly help. I think the issue is, though, that Jupiter in your sign in retrograde is in that square with Saturn. So even if you do want to feel upbeat about a relationship or certain situations, and could have absolute cause to be so, somehow or another some worldly pressures or demands, perhaps you're having to play quite a lot of a leadership role to other people because of the pressure they're under, and that can all have a follow-up impact on just how you're feeling about your connection to everyone, to be honest. So relationships don't have to be with one special person. They can be with the primary players in our life, most of all the relationship we have with ourselves, to be honest. But because the moon in your sign is going to be impacted by Neptune, I just feel that you're going to be a lot more sensitive. But if there is something that you feel passionate about, with Mars also in retrograde in an opposition with Venus, you're probably not going to hold back from asserting it. So the key really, with Saturn and Neptune so potently impacting on your sign, is to make sure that if you are going to take a particular position, and especially, you know, if you want to mark out what you feel is acceptable or not. So in other words, you do want to give someone exactly the information that's important to you, The key here is to make sure that whatever you speak from is based on absolutely an exact oversight of what the situation is. So if someone's been telling you things, I would be very, very careful. If someone gossips in your ears over the next couple of weeks about your relationship, or someone that you mutually know, I'd be very guarded about why they're presenting that information to you in that particular way. Another thing that could happen with this particular full moon is you might be in a relationship and you might be pretty pleased with it, but for whatever reason, it may be that someone around you, such as your partner's folks or your folks, don't quite or are not quite buying in quite as much as you would like, which can prove to be very, very frustrating. I would say don't react. With Mars in the third house, it would be easy to really be very firm, fierce even, in your response, but I would not take the least line of resistance, but I would be a bit more tactical at this stage. There are going to be some tensions with some people with the energies that we've got going around in the next few weeks, and I would just keep the lines of communication open and just assess things. But if you do need to provide some leadership, choose your words with great care. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. So Cancer, this is a very intriguing full moon for you personally. Lunations have a big impact on you because the moon is your ruler. So for you, the moon effectively is in house 12, which is a very delicate area. It can be very much to do with the parts of life that we're perhaps a little bit reluctant to look at. But it also can be an area that, if we embrace it, can be superb for boosting our understanding of what really makes us tick. Anything to do with having some peaceful moments and recharging can actually help you to prepare your energy ready for the very busy couple of weeks ahead. But if you are grappling with some financial decisions in your situation, that can bring a much more passionate vibe to the equation because of Mars being opposite Venus. It's a very impulsive link, that one. And whether it's someone that you're drawn towards romantically or it is around the Christmas budget, the key with the full moon in your 12th house is to understand why you may be in some ways drawn towards a particular person or towards a particular way of managing your resources around those gifts. Now, in a wider context, the 12th house is about how we feel, but it can be about things that are buried, and it can be about things from the past, and it can be about deep sadnesses. It can be very historical things. And because of Neptune being in your 9th house, applying to the position of the moon, but also the sun, however you're feeling, for good or bad, is going to be amplified over the next couple of weeks. But as long as you are aware of that, that's going to help you to work through it. You know, in the tarot, the moon card can be very much to do with listening to our intuition, but it can also be where we question our intuition and we're not quite sure of our emotional lay of the land. And I feel that that's how this particular event may seem to you, that whatever's going on in your situation, it can feel very vivid, particularly if you are worrying about money, which is entirely understandable. But just know that if there is a relationship concern that you're trying to unpick, the black moon of the 30th of December is going to give you a fantastic opportunity to resolve that. But if there are some things washing around that haven't been said, maybe some attitudes or some resentments from someone close to you, the best way is to gently tease it out into the open and release it. Because even if there's part of you that can close down and be very cautious about your boundaries, very tenacious, and make sure you keep your space from others, sometimes it is good to try to have the dialogue. And of course, the sign of Gemini is very much about the conversation. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. Now Leo, your natural charisma is being boosted exponentially by Mars because it's giving you that bit extra of self-belief. Lovely. Also opposite Venus in your 7th house. How good is that? The full moon is in your 11th house, which can be your network, friendship, social interaction, your future, and the sun in house 5. The position of Neptune is in 8 along with Saturn. So Jupiter's in 11 as well. So maybe you have met some new people. You've expanded your social circle since Jupiter moved into Gemini. The slowdown through the retrograde may have seen some things come up. But I feel that relationships for you at the moment give you quite a few choices. And maybe that this full moon is going to illustrate that. And it may be around who you spend time with over the festive period. Because the chances are you're going to be much in demand. But I feel what's going to guide you is spending time with the people where you feel that you can end up being most closely invested. So that could be someone who, yeah, they could be very playful and fun. Maybe even someone you encounter is very alluring. But where do you really want to show that deeper part of your nature? And Saturn and Neptune can both provide opportunities, but also can provide challenges. So, for example, if you're wanting to be very flirty, playful, and not very attached, then maybe that's Saturn's energy coming up. If you're wanting to be attached, yearning for that, Neptune could pull you towards someone who might not necessarily be the right person for you because of the shimmering, distorting, sometimes deceiving energies of Neptune. In a long-term relationship of any kind, it may be shared finances that actually could impact on the overall vibe. But because Mars is in your sign, if you do need to tell someone how you feel, the chances are you're going to be much more direct about it. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. So Virgo, for you, the full moon is in the 10th house. And one of the things about 10th house energy, it's very difficult to disguise how we feel, for good or bad. And the 10th house is also, of course, about work and our connection to the wider world. And it may also be to do with your personal responsibilities, whether it is as a parent, in terms of your work, maybe anything to do with a property matter. Now, on the other side of the heavens, it's how that all feels, the sun in the 4th house in Sagittarius. But Sagittarius energy can be quite evasive about looking at emotion. Then we have the 2 players in your 7th house. So whether it's a work relationship or a home family relationship, those could be the areas that just feel a little bit uncertain, particularly because Mars is in your 12th house, which can in itself be quite challenging. So I would say that if you're finding a situation professionally or a boss professionally rather testing, the chances are you're really going to be looking forwards to spending time with people you're close to over the next few weeks. But if that's not possible, or you spend a lot of time living on your own, that isolation could in some ways feed any concerns you've got, particularly around relationship matters. Maybe it's about where you live, because the 4th house can be about the feelings around home. The 10th house, how we actually make it happen, whether it's the property we rent or buy. So I just feel that at the moment you're needing to connect to people, and yet the messages you could be getting are either mixed or cool, and also some old stuff could be stirred up within you by Mars, and with the moon in the 10th house it may be more difficult to disguise that. So I would say the next couple of weeks could feel quite tender, but just know that from the 21st, when the sun moves into the sign of Capricorn and we have the winter solstice, you're really going to emerge. You're going to feel much more in form and much more outgoing. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. Libra, because you're an air sign, you're a communicator. This is a full moon that essentially is about communication. But it's a flip for you. So the energy of Gemini is the 9th house energy, the big picture. The Sagittarius energy is the quick moving interactions that we all have. Now Mars for you is in a super sociable area. Your ruler Venus is opposite. Your 5th house can be very romantic and playful. The chances are, you're going to have some very, very lively encounters over the next couple of weeks. What's not to like? Well, actually, it could be obligations, work, just the amount of stamina and energy you've got to venture out into the social fray. If you have been working extremely hard, you may feel that you're running on empty, particularly with the vibe of Saturn in your 6th house of physical well-being over the last couple of years. But if you are journeying anywhere, or you're needing to exchange ideas with someone, I think that there could actually be some really good fun to be had. I feel the main thing is to make sure your plan is clear. Neptune's great at distorting things and confusing us. Saturn's reminding you that anything that you prepare that's painstakingly put together, the chances are it will work pretty well. So a bubbly time is in store for you, for sure. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. Scorpio, this full moon for you occurs in your 8th house, which is redolent really of the energy of Scorpio, which is deep, passionate, can be a little secretive, can also be about the things we can't necessarily see but are very much cooking away out of sight, subterranean but passionate. The 2nd house energy of the sun is about your immediate finance. The 8th house is where you need to connect and collaborate with someone else. If you're feeling, very close to someone at this time, I don't feel that this full moon's going to make that a difficulty. It's possible that with Mars in such a potent location, your ruler, traditional ruler, that you've got quite a lot on with your work. And Saturn being in the 5th house is hardly a bunch of laughs. We all know that. But it also suggests if you work hard at having a good time in your creativity, you could get a reward. So Neptune in the sign of Pisces, like Saturn, is essentially saying to you, if you do decide to party, the chances are it's going to be in a very full-on way. So if you're up for that, that's lovely. If you're someone who's not really into that level of imbibing and socialising, it may be that you are thinking in a very cool way about just getting through this festive period, keeping yourself intact around your finances, and then assessing things in the new year where you may be able to snap for yourself a bargain or two in the January sales. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. So Sagittarius, for you, there's been a lot of focus on your sign and your needs in terms of your creative plan. Mercury tracking backwards in Sagittarius, as it does until later today, has perhaps inhibited things, and maybe not everything's gone quite as quickly as you would like. Then, of course, because Saturn on this event is in conflict with your ruler in your sector of relationships, and Saturn's in your sector of emotion, some relationships could be tense, particularly if you feel that someone who you feel should be more supportive is not tuned in and not aware enough of your exact circumstances. So for you, if you really have been trying your absolute best to move things forwards that you feel can help everyone that you're connected with, and people are not particularly, there could be some moans that you've been busy or preoccupied, that may be something that could really sort of trigger you, particularly with Mars in your 9th house, and that could bring out that part of you that can be very direct about delivering some home truths. But if you're traveling over the next few weeks, chances are that could be very exciting. But with Saturn and Neptune being in the 4th house, for a Sagittarius, this is a very unique period where home and hearth actually call out to you more than the bright lights. That's not to say you can't enjoy some nights out, but there's something about at least being in situations that really are very comforting and warming that's really going to be very appealing to you. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. Capricorn, for you, this particular full moon is in the 6th house, which is those practicalities, making sure things run smoothly and efficiently. The Sun, however, along with the retreating Mercury, which does, to be fair, end today, have been in house 12, which may have been priming up a sense of isolation or worry, or perhaps you've had a lot to contend with in terms of work and obligations and responsibilities. Because your ruler Saturn's in your 3rd house of thinking, which of course is very Gemini-like, but that perhaps has made you rather cautious or even worrisome. So the square between Saturn and Jupiter for you could mean that whatever you're juggling with, it can feel a little bit oppressive. Neptune in your 3rd house is great for your imagination, but in this particular T-square, if you are fearful about something, or you're not quite sure of certain people's loyalties or trustworthiness, that energy can take on a life of its own. So it's going to be important to use that more grounded side of your nature to remind yourself that, look, however other people are, it is their choice. It's how you think that's going to create your reality. And I feel that's extremely important to remember that with Neptune in a potentially quite naughty energy on this particular event, which could really activate some deeper anxieties and worries. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. Aquarius, a 5th house full moon. It's not bad to have. The 5th house is where we playful, sociable, affectionate. It can be to do with kids if you have kids. The 11th house is much more that part of you that likes to connect to people generally, more the social dimension. Now Venus in your sign is probably making you extremely in demand at the moment, but Mars on your 7th house is also giving you the opportunity to, if you need to manage your time or need to let some people down gently, you can do so with a degree of assertion. The challenge for you, to be honest, is that Saturn and Neptune squaring up to firstly Jupiter with Saturn and the position of the moon and the sun with Neptune could see you being a bit too free and easy with your resources, or trying to make it really special, particularly if you've got children or for a partner. And it just really is important to make sure that your financial foundations, which you've been working very, very hard on over the last couple of years, are not jeopardized by being too free and easy. Or if you're thinking of having a major punt over the next couple of weeks, I really would think again, because that swirling mist of Neptune, the restrictive energies of Saturn, this is not a great time for speculation. Now, we're reading about, obviously, digital currencies are sort of booming and so forth, and you might think or have been thinking, look, I'm going to use the festive holidays to give myself the space to do some research. Well, if that's your approach, then you can potentially make things work for you, because you're going to take the opportunity seriously to do that analysis. But if you're just going to be much more spontaneous, I'm not sure that kind of quick making a decision in a very instantaneous way, I don't necessarily think that will work out so well. But socially, I think this could be a very enjoyable couple of weeks for you. For your special offer, 30% off year 2025 personal horoscope forecast package, please see below. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic written forecasts. So Pisces, for you, the full moon is in house 4, which is very emotional. The position of the sun is the 10th house, which is your connection to the world. Are you happy in your work? If the answer is yes, that's fantastic. Mars is certainly giving you, despite its retrograde, extra stamina, but Venus in the 12th house could be teasing up in your mind some uncertainties about your love life. Possibly there's a connection with someone who's not fully available. Maybe you've got a secret fascination with someone, a crush. Maybe it's an old flame that's been coming up in your mind. But anything that would affect your emotional world, do proceed with a degree of caution. It's not that Saturn in your sign makes you unlucky, it just makes it important that you're aware of what you should be focusing on. If you spread yourself too thinly, you might not be doing the right thing. Also, it depends on how close Saturn is to key influences in your natal chart. But the overall picture of this particular full moon is work-life balance. Now, if you're lucky enough to have some time off over the next couple of weeks, you may be able to recharge your batteries. But that will also see you spending time potentially with people you don't ordinarily spend a lot of time with. And there may be part of you that actually is still really wanting to push forwards with something around your professional world that may have been delayed because of Mercury's retrograde. And therefore the emotional dimension of Christmas in some ways may feel a little bit of an inconvenience. But if you're someone who's much more up for being with people that really matter to you, I just think it's important not to overload yourself with too many obligations, because with Saturn and Neptune in your sign, you've only got a certain amount of energy. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Do check out your year 2025 deep dive forecast for each of the 12 signs, or my overview, or your year 2025 personal zodiac forecast, 30% off, life roadmap as well, free Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Vedic forecast. Please see the link below for more.